This is in response to Billy's Talking Points memo from Monday, March 30th, 2015. Why the left does not want Bowe Bergdahl punished. Now, before I even get into that, let me just bring up that this is what Billy does. He brings up this obscure thing. Now, meaning that this is just one person, something went wrong, and there's going to be a trial, and that's what's going to happen. But in the greater aspect of what's going on in the world right now and the importance of Billy's show, you would think he would have more important things to say than this, let's just call it a little petty thing that's going on about this young man. And, you know, there's an upcoming treaty that might be going on with Iran that might be done by the end of the day today. There's the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would really hurt the average working person here in the United States. There is, and the big thing was the Indiana Religious Freedom Act, where Mike Pence showed that he's not ready for prime time at all, and neither is the state of Indiana, at least by their elected representatives who are Republican. But Billy doesn't want to go into those important things. He only wants to go into this thing. He wants to be petty. He wants to be snickering, and he wants to go after an individual who is obviously has some severe mental conditions. But let's get into it. So the New York Times wrote an article on Friday basically indicating that Bowe Bergdahl had probably suffered quite enough, being out for 5 years, probably being tortured, away from his family, blah, blah, and that he might possibly have serious mental conditions that he would need to get. It would be good if he would be honorably discharged, because then he would get his back pay, and then he would get the mental health through the Veterans Administration, which he may need for the rest of his life. And of course, Billy mocks all that, you know, indicating how much money that is. That's really not very. If you're away for 5 years and you get $300,000, that's really not a whole heck of a lot of money. But you know, like I said, he may need that. And of course, Billy is mocking that the New York Times wants to give Bowe Bergdahl a pass. And the New York Times is really indicating that this is a person who is suffering. And the other point was that the New York Times probably is doing it and reporting on this in much more in depth than Billy is, and they're much more aware of what was going on with Bowe Bergdahl before he got to Afghanistan and around the time that he left, and indicating that he was probably very unstable, and this is something that would be brought up in the trial. And then Billy indicates that they're going to they're going to make the trial all about putting the Army on trial for doing that. And I can only say from a personal standpoint, I remember around 2006, 2007, right in that time frame, a friend of mine was very upset. And the reason he was upset is that his son had already had one tour in Iraq, and he was going back for his second tour in Iraq. And the Army was very, very well aware, because he had been written up a number of times, that this guy's son had a severe alcohol and drug problem. And that wasn't the case with some, not necessarily a whole lot, but that was the case with a number of people, and they were all sent back. Now, the case with Bowe Bergdahl, I guess we'll find out more at the trial itself. But let's just say, what type of human being, knowing what would happen to him if he left his post in Afghanistan, would go out and do that? What would be the mental state of someone who would actually do that? And I would guarantee you that the Army, in telling them where they were going to be and what they were going to do, and would tell them what would happen to them if they got captured, what would happen to them if they left their unit and were all alone somewhere. In terms of they told them all of this stuff. They let them know all of this stuff. So for someone to do that, I'd say they would have, you know, a real serious mental health issue. Now, of course, Billy is really using this to go against Obama, because he's indicating that this whole thing makes Obama look bad because he had his parents at the White House, and that the foreign policy that the United States has is a catastrophe. He brings on a guy named General Phil, General Flynn. We know there's plenty of generals who are big time in terms of they want more and more war, and you're always going to have that side. And then you're going to have other generals who want to contain what they have and eliminate it, and they have a very long-term strategic aspect. You know, Obama could be listening to both sides and making a decision on his own. And the reason why the military is there is to advise the president, not to make the decisions for the president. You know, but again, Billy wants to use this as indicating that Obama's foreign policy goes wrong. And before I go right into the end of it, right in the end, Billy basically says that he should get convicted, and then he wouldn't make him serve because he's already been suffered enough. And of course, Billy now is the judge and jury and the executioner on the whole thing. But getting quickly back to the foreign policy aspect of it all, I still want to see Billy come up with a plan on how he's going to fix everything in the Middle East. He says it could be done with 10,000 people, 10,000 men and women from our services, and that's just not going to happen in any way, shape, or form. I want him to lay out a plan, a big plan. I want to see it, because he's just as big a coward as anyone else on that Republican side. They talk big, but they don't have a plan.